guys, this is Brooklyn's mommy. Today I want to tell you about Brooklyn's Aunt Amy. She writes books, poems, and short stories. She's written many stories and 2 novels that are over 300 pages long. Her aunt writes books under a special name called a pseudonym, which is also a pen name. It's a unique name that others use when they want to keep their name secret. Her Aunt Amy was not able to make it today, but she wrote a short story for all of you. And it's almost October, so it's about Halloween. It's called The Witch of Whispering Pines. The dark house loomed high in front of us. Its 2 big double windows looked like wide eyes staring at us, waiting, watching. A sudden gust of wind blew dead leaves across our sneakers, and one of the shutters creaked and groaned as it swayed, hanging from the old house. Kylie nudged my arm. "Go on, go up and knock on the door." My mouth dropped open. "No way. You go. I'm not walking up there. The witch lives in that house. She's not going to have candy to hand out. Probably dead bugs and worms," I said, and made a fake gagging sound. Meg and Madeline giggled. My 4 best friends and I made a bet earlier that week. After we'd finished trick-or-treating, one of us was going to knock on the door of the Elmhurst house. It was more of a dare, and whoever did it got everyone's candy. The problem was, no one wanted the candy that bad. The Elmhurst house was old, very old and haunted, or that was what everyone in town said. No one in Whispering Pines wanted to go near the house, even though someone still lived inside, though no one ever saw her, not really. Sometimes people would say they saw a person, an old woman, like an ancient with long, white, scraggly hair, standing in one of the windows or on the front porch, but no one ever got close enough. No one dared, not even the adults. Our idea sounded great at the time, but now, standing in front of the house, it seems stupid and scary. Meg dressed up like JoJo Siwa and had tied her long blonde hair in a high ponytail that hung behind her as she craned her neck to look up at the 3rd-floor attic window of the old house. Out of the 4 of us, she was the most freaked out by the idea of seeing the Witch of Whispering Pines. Madeline wore a black witch's hat and long black dress that drug the ground. Her flame red hair peeked out from under the hat and brushed the top of her shoulders. Green face paint covered Maddie's face and neck. I laughed because she looked like the Wicked Witch from the television show Once Upon a Time. Maddie always dressed in costumes that were old school and boring, but for tonight her costume was fitting for the occasion. Kylie thought it would be funny to dress up like a clown. She knew I hated clowns. I'd rather face the Witch of Whispering Pines than a clown. Kylie painted her face white, her lips red, and exaggerated the lines around her mouth into a creepy smile. A red foam ball sat on the tip of her nose, and rainbow curly wig covered her head. Ugh, she looked so disturbing. I changed the idea for my outfit at the last minute. I'd planned on being Wonder Woman. I loved the Avengers movies, but since Kylie decided to freak me out, I decided to do the same to her. Kylie hated old antique dolls, so my mom painted my face to look like an old cracked porcelain and dressed me in a frilly, purposely made dirty dress, complete with ripped ruffles and hems. I had scuffed up black patent doll shoes and white tights with holes cut in them. It was the best costume ever. We all stood at the end of the road that led to the Elmhurst house under a street lamp. The house was at the end, a dead end, and it felt appropriate. Every one of us was too scared to take a single step forward, and that was saying a lot. We'd each scored half a pillowcase of candy. Tired of waiting, I let out a sigh. "Oh, fine, I'll go." I tied a knot in my pillowcase and sat the sack of goodies on the curb. "Don't even think about touching that," I pointed to my cachet of sugar-filled heaven. "And don't touch any of the candy in your sacks either. It's all going to be mine." I took a deep breath and started walking toward the rickety wooden fence that had seen better days. Now a patchwork of peeling, faded white paint, many of the pickets were missing. broken or hanging loose. It reminded me of when my baby teeth fell out and the new ones were halfway in. My 3 friends stood in silence. No protests came from their lips to stop, that they'd go instead. Nothing. They just stood and watched me near the front porch of the spookiest house in the world. Well, the scariest house in Whispering Pines, at least. I slowed my walk as I got to the front steps and paused. Another gust blew across the lawn. It wasn't so much a lawn, but a lot of brown dead grass and weeds. The wind caught the hanging shutter and knocked it to the ground with a loud snap followed by a thud. Kylie, Meg, and Madeline screamed and started running down the road away from the house. They'd even dropped their candy at their feet. Something from inside the house slammed and the front door opened. I stood frozen, unable to move, as a figure appeared in the doorway. No light came from inside the house. Just a shadow of a person filled the frame, and then a foot appeared on the porch, followed by a leg, a torso dressed in long white. My body jerked, and I jumped, turned to run, and heard a hard thump behind me, followed by a faint cry. "Please, wait, don't leave me alone." The voice didn't sound scary, but sad. I stopped and turned around to see an old woman in a white nightgown laying on the porch. She'd fallen, maybe tripped, and wasn't moving. I didn't know what to do. The Witch of Whispering Pines was right in front of me, and then I realized she wasn't a witch at all. She was an old lady who lived alone in an old house, and she needed my help. I ran up the steps and knelt down next to the old woman. She tilted her face up and smiled. "You came back. No one ever talks to me or comes to see me." "Are you hurt?" I asked her. She nodded. "My cat tripped me when she ran out the door. That shutter frightened her. I've meant to have my son fix it, but he's always too busy. He lives in another town, you know." "Just stay here. I'll go call 911. I ran down the front walk and stopped. "I'm sorry we scared you." She smiled. "You didn't. It's all right. I'm used to people poking around the house." I nodded, still feeling bad. All this time we'd made a lonely woman feel like an outcast. I was ashamed. My feet moved faster than I'd ever run before down the street to the house on the corner. I saw my 3 friends standing at the stop sign waiting for me, I guess. "Did you see the witch?" Maddie asked. "What happened?" said Meg. Kylie stood there, mouth open, shocked. I was still in one piece. "Did she say anything?" I ignored them and ran to the front door of the Petersons' house and banged on the wood. Miss Peterson opened the door and frowned. "Why, Bianca, you were here already. We're also out of candy, darling. Sorry," she said, smiling. "No, I need help." My heart raced in my chest as I tried to get out the words. "The lady in the Elmhurst house, she fell. She's hurt. Can you call 911? Miss Peterson gasped. "Ted," she called out to her husband. "Miss Elmhurst fell on the porch again. Call 911. I stood on the front stoop as Miss Peterson threw a coat on and rushed down the road with me to the Elmhurst house. Miss Elmhurst still lay on the porch. "Oh, Myra, are you all right? Ted has help coming. They're on their way," Miss Peterson told Miss Elmhurst. Miss Elmhurst nodded and smiled, then when she moved her arm. Her paper-thin skin had already begun to bruise. In the distance, I saw Meg, Maddie, and Kylie standing where they dropped their candy, watching the scene. They looked confused but not afraid anymore. I stayed by Miss Elmhurst's side until the EMTs arrived and transferred her to the ambulance. Before they shut the door, she whispered, "Will you come to see me when I get home?" I shook my head up and down. "Yes, I'll be waiting." Miss Elmhurst smiled. The EMT shut the doors, and the ambulance drove off. Mr. and Miss Peterson thanked me for letting them know what had happened and went home, leaving me to rejoin my friends. They stared at me for a moment, unsure of what to say. Then Kylie chirped up, "You know, since she's not a real witch, the bet doesn't count." I laughed. "Keep your candy. I don't care." My 3 friends' eyes widened with the knowledge that they'd get to keep their candy. We walked down the street hand in hand as we always did, and I smiled. I solved the mystery of the Witch of Whispering Pines, but what made me smile was knowing there was no witch, but instead a nice old lady who needed a friend and who'd found one. The end. I hope you guys liked the story. Have a good day.